Thank you. Erev Tov, everyone. In the measure of damages that the Torah discusses in this week's parsha, so there, one of the measures is boshes, which is loosely translated as shame, embarrassment. It's a psychological discomfort. It is not comparable to the physical damage that is done to a person. And as I mentioned yesterday, all of these areas, nezek, tsar, ripui, sheves, boshes, all of them are very hard to quantify in terms of monetary damages. And the Gemara in Bava Kama spends a great deal of space and time in trying to come to the formula by which we can assess these damages. Now, boshes is especially difficult because it's a psychological assessment of the person. How much would a person be willing to pay, so to speak, or to be compensated for being shamed by this and this act? The shame could be that he's lying in the public street. He was hit by the other person, or by an automobile, God forbid, or something. So just that shame, that embarrassment. Are there other forms of shame? Some of it are almost permanent. Psychologically, it's very hard to get rid of traumatic experiences. We remember them. They're embedded within our brain. And many times they come to the fore in unforeseen circumstances. So the Gemara begins with a basic rule that there is no one size fits all in all of these cases. Now, for instance, in the United States, under statutory law, the Workmen's Compensation Acts of every state, there's a law that says how much a finger is worth, how much an arm is worth, how much a leg is worth. If, God forbid, there's an accident in the factory, and the factory is mandated to carry workmen's compensation insurance. So a finger was worth $5,000. Now, it could be that the man is a master flautist or a saxophone player. To him, the finger is worth more than $5,000. Yet the state has regulated an amount, and that amount is for everybody. The Torah did not do that. The Torah looked at every case individually. And therefore it depends. The Gemara in Bava Kama says will make a difference between a person who is a person who cuts diamonds, fashions diamonds, which is a certain skill, and between someone who is a completely unskilled person. So there's a relative scale. And when it comes to boshes, the Gemara says, "Akol lefi ha'mevayesh v'hamitbayesh." It depends who shamed you, and it depends who was shamed. So I'll give you an example, true story. When Rabbi Cook was a young Rav in Lithuania in a town called Boisk. So once Rabbi Zalman Meltzer visited the community. And one of the Balabatim in the community, for one reason or another, insulted Rabbi Zalman. Probably called him a Haredi. And was the custom in Europe was, that custom has not lasted, but the custom in Europe for years, for centuries, was that a Rav had a right to slap a balabos for behavior that was unbecoming. So Rav Cook went over to the man and he slapped him for insulting Rabbi Zalman. Well, if he got slapped by the Rav, that was a great shame. So the man soon thereafter left the community and he immigrated to the United States of America. Fast forward 30 years. In 1923, after the First World War, and they were trying to build the yeshivas in Eastern Europe and Lithuania and Poland. So the Vada Yeshivas organized a tour of America to raise money. So it was Ramesha Mordechai Epstein, the Rosh Yeshiva Slobodka, and Rabbi Dov Ber Kahana Shapiro, who was the Kovner Rav, and Rav Cook came from Eretz Yisrael to raise money on behalf of the Vada Yeshivas. So the great Jewish philanthropist Harry Fischel arranged a reception at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and they invited the elite of the Jewish community in New York to come, and everybody came and naturally contributed. When it was all over, they went over to the Rabbonim to shake their hands and have words of blessing. So a man came over to Rav Cook and he shook his hand and he said to him, do you recognize me? Rav Cook looked at him and he said, you'll have to excuse me, but I really don't know who you are. So the man said to him, 30 years ago in Boisk, you slapped me in the face. So Rav Cook was shaken. So the man said, Rebbe, I want you to know, you slapped me. I was so embarrassed. I picked up and I left. And I came to America and I've become a millionaire here. So here's my other cheek, slap me again. So it's hakol lefi hamavayish v'hamizbayesh. You have to see what the circumstances are and who slapped you and who was the one that was slapped and why. So that's the measure of boshes. And therefore, it's obvious that the measure of boshes is a very flexible one. It's very hard to come to any hard and fast quantification of the shame in terms of money. But the Torah recognized that there's an element of embarrassment. Chazal say, Kol ha'mavayish es chaveiro kilu horgo. If you shame somebody, you've murdered him. And the Gemara says, because when you shame somebody, he blushes, his face turns red, and then it turns white. The blood drains from his face. So that's like murder. And therefore, the idea of shaming a person was seen actionable as damages caused to the person. The discussion in the Gemara and in the Rishonim and the Achronim, whether Boshes applies when there is no nezek, when there was no damage, just plain insult, like the Knesset every day, which is, to me, intolerable how our society allows that. But in any event, this concept of Boshes exists. And the concept is that it's a damage. And the concept is that all damages must somehow have a method of compensation. Because otherwise the person, God forbid, remains with an avera. He remains with the stigma of having caused this damage to another person and never having made good on it. So there are many subtleties in halacha, psychological subtleties, how it affects the person. And that's why I've mentioned to you many times that when a question is asked to a Rav for a halachic decision, he may give one answer to Mr. A and he may give a different answer to Mr. B, because the circumstances are different and the person is different. That's an important idea to have in mind, so that questions are not answered in theory. All the tshuvas are lamaisa. What to do? What to do depends. Akol afi amavayish v'amisbayish. Rabbi Chananya ben Rabbi Omer Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakus Es Yisrael L'fi Chachir Bo Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenema